Greetings all, Ferrari Man 601 here. Well, Formula One testing is officially complete for the last 2 weeks over at Catalunya in Spain. The teams have been pounding around doing hundreds of laps each, and hopefully they have now got their 2017 cars well sorted and figured out so that they can go off to the first round of the championship on the 26th of March from Melbourne, Australia. Because testing is complete, and because the first Grand Prix is our next milestone for this 2017 Formula One season, it's time for me to get back on the internet and talk about some of the storylines that I have been able to divine from the 2 weeks of testing that we have just witnessed. Before I begin, however, I do just want to make one somber note. This weekend, we lost Sir John Surtees. He died peacefully in a London hospital over the weekend, surrounded by his family. He was 83 years old. Sir John, of course, the only racer ever to win world championships on 2 and 4 wheels. In addition to being the 1964 Formula One world champion, John Surtees also won 4 500cc motorcycle world championships in 1956, 1958, 1959, and 1960. 3 straight consecutive world titles on motorcycles for John Surtees before he entered Formula One and then won that 1964 World Drivers' Championship. That's a great loss for the motor racing community, and Sir John, of course, he was predeceased by his son Henry, who was killed in a Formula 2 race in 2009 at Brands Hatch when an errant wheel from another car which had had its own accident quite inexplicably and freakishly struck Henry Surtees on the head. So John and Henry, we'll miss you both. Hopefully you're both reunited now on the big racetrack in the sky with a whole paddock full of wonderful cars unknown to planet Earth for you to pound around in and have some great fun. And now on to the 2 weeks that we've just witnessed from Catalunya. I'm only going to go through the top 6 in terms of specific laps and time, simply because beyond that things start to get a little bit irrelevant. However, in first position by overall lap time, we have Kimi Räikkönen of Ferrari with his best time of 1:18.634 over the course of 365 laps during those 2 weeks, covering just under 1,700 kilometers. In second position, also of Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel, his best lap time 1:19.024 over 591 laps for just over 2,750 kilometers. Sebastian Vettel obviously doing the bulk of the testing work for Ferrari. In third, we have the first of the Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas, his best lap time, a 1:19.310 over 628 laps covered for a distance of 2,923 kilometers. In fourth, we have Lewis Hamilton, his best time, a 1:19.350, just 0.04 of a second slower than his teammate. He covered 468 laps for 2,178 kilometers. In fifth, we have Felipe Massa, back from his very brief retirement. His best lap time, a 1:19.420 over 414 laps covered for 1,927 kilometers. In sixth, we have Max Verstappen for Red Bull, his best lap time, a 1:19.438, just a hundredth down from Felipe Massa in fifth position. He covered 347 laps for a distance of 1,615 kilometers. Beyond that, things start to get a little bit shaky in terms of being able to read the overall pace. However, it does appear that Haas are faster than McLaren, and McLaren are faster than Sauber. The two Force Indias are next to each other in 10th and 11th, Perez and Ocon respectively. They are splitting the Renaults and the Red Bulls for the most part. We have Verstappen in 6th with Red Bull, and then Ricciardo in 9th also for Red Bull. Then the Force Indias follow them up immediately. Palmer in 12th for the Renault immediately follows. It appears from these timesheets that a pecking order is beginning to emerge, and there are some surprises here. We all know that Mercedes are going to be very competitive this year. They have been so since 2014, and really in 2013 they really started to get their act together with Lewis Hamilton on board and Rosberg being very consistent, and they were really able to get their engineering together and start to fight for wins. And in 2014 through 2016, of course, we all know what happened. However, to see Ferrari, both of the Ferraris in front of both of the Mercedes, is very interesting to see from testing, and I have to wonder just what sort of trickery Mercedes have stuck up their sleeves, because it's rather surprising, given Ferrari's recent form, to see them in front of Mercedes, and not just splitting them, but clear and away in front of them. Vettel's best time is 3/10 faster than Bottas. So we've got some very good progress, evidently, from Ferrari. In my review of the Ferrari for this year, I wasn't quite impressed with it. It certainly looked like a good car to me in launch spec. However, of course, Formula One being what it is, those launch spec cars are essentially all but forgotten already, and development has taken off in earnest. Ferrari apparently have found something in their setup or their aero specification, probably a combination of both of those two things, and definitely they have found some real pace. Mercedes, particularly Hamilton, he's been making some comments saying that he's not quite happy overall with the configuration of the car, and I can't quite wrap my mind around that, because Bottas is brand new to the team, he's never driven one of their cars before, and already he has outperformed Hamilton. Okay, it's only 0.04 of a second, but he's also done significantly more mileage in testing. He covered 628 laps, and Hamilton only did 468 laps. And there's an 800-kilometer difference in those laps. So one has to wonder, is Bottas doing the bulk of the mileage simply because he needs to acclimate himself into the car and start to learn how to work with the engineers? Or honestly, is Hamilton really just starting to have some issues with this Mercedes? It's really unknown at this time, but Hamilton has been vocal saying that he's not quite happy with the car. Like I said, I can't really wrap my mind around that, but apparently there could be some sort of a shakeup at the sharp end of the field, and that is always something that's very welcome in Formula One. It would be great to have a true fight for the championship again, because we really haven't seen that since really 2008 for the most part, between Ferrari and McLaren, Massa and Hamilton. 2009, Jenson Button ran away with it at the start, and Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel started to come back, and, well, Braun, they were able to take that shoestring budget that they had and win a couple more races in the middle of the season, and that was enough to secure the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. But really, like I said, it's between Massa and Hamilton in 2008. That was the last time that we had a real fight one-on-one for the championship. So it would be very interesting to see if that sort of dynamic begins to develop here in 2017 with brand new aerodynamic regulations, refined power units. These V6 turbo power units now, I really think they have reached their maturity. 2014 was obviously a developmental year. 2015 still a developmental year for some teams. I'm talking about you, McLaren. But now, in 2017, these engines have been around for a few years. People understand how they work, and they're developing them all the time. We're seeing the 1,000 horsepower barrier broken this year, definitely. Some of the engineers from Renault, I believe, went out to say, no, 1,000 horsepower is not going to happen, but we're seeing 1,000 horsepower. Mercedes were definitely showing us 1,000 horsepower by the end of last year. They're definitely running that every time that car is out on track now. I have no question about it. What the maturity of the power units means, though, is we're likely to see very good reliability up and down the field. Yes, Sauber are running year-old Ferrari units, and Ferrari did have some reliability issues at the beginning of last year. However, I've got to believe that those issues were sorted, and that Sauber are going to be running the latest 2015 spec available from Ferrari. So hopefully, reliability up and down the field will be good. We're going to have to watch Renault in terms of that, because their engine from 2014 has been regarded as the weakest, other than the Honda, of course. That's a completely other story. But out of the engines that are actually respectable, the Renault has been deemed the weakest pretty much by the jury of Formula One fans. So we'll have to watch them, but Renault are saying they've made some great progress with their power unit, and the lap times from Red Bull in particular, yes, I would definitely agree with that. Red Bull and Renault both had some very good mileage during testing, it must be said. So I think reliability is going to be good. Another story that we've got from testing is Haas. If we have to nominate a most improved team from 2016 to 2017, I think Haas far and away take that title. Magnussen and Grosjean. Magnussen, of course, moving over from Renault. They are 15th and 16th, respectively, in the overall classification over the 2 weeks. Magnussen with a 120.504, with 369 laps covered for 1,717 kilometers. Grosjean right behind him in P16, 121.110, his best lap time over 346 laps. Very good to see that both Magnussen and Grosjean effectively doing the same distance in testing. There's only 100 kilometers in it between those two guys in terms of distance, so certainly Haas are doing a very good job. I've got to say as well, the VF17 rather, looks like a very good car. Clearly there's a lot of Ferrari developmental influence going on there, because I've seen some very interesting pictures online of the Ferrari overlaid next to the Haas, and well, there's quite a striking similarity between those two cars, it must be said. Of course, Haas also running the latest Ferrari power unit, so effectively the same spec as what are in the factory cars. But it's interesting to wonder whether or not Haas is becoming a Ferrari B team. It's possible. For a long time Sauber had that distinction, but I think Haas now truly are becoming a Ferrari B team. Now, I don't think that Ferrari are looking at Haas in terms of driver development. I don't think they have any aspirations to sign Magnussen or Grosjean in the future. However, in terms of engineering, in terms of trying new things, trying new personnel structures, organizationally, whatever, I think Ferrari might be having a little bit more of an intimate relationship with Haas this year. Haas themselves, however, it's a very impressive outfit from North Carolina, and for only their second year in Formula One to have made that much of an engineering leap over the winter, absolutely great to see. And as an American, I love to see an American team in Formula One. Whenever we've had American drivers, okay, that's really good, but that's one person. I want an organization representing my country in Formula One. Everybody in Europe, obviously all of the Formula One teams being based in Europe, the commercial rights are held in other places sometimes, yes, Force India, but obviously Formula One is very much a European sport, so I'm very, very happy to see an American team in there, and an American team not doing poorly. So very good to see Haas looking to be on the boil and improving things all the time. They do seem to have brake issues persisting from last year, however. Grosjean has said that he still does not feel comfortable about the brakes in that car, so perhaps we could see a brake supplier change for Haas. That remains to be seen. But in terms of their testing mileage, the car looks reliable. Certainly they haven't done as many laps as some others. However, that's respectable, absolutely respectable. I don't recall any big reliability issues or any technical issues at all that we heard about from Haas, so seems to be good from them. In terms of reliability, however, we've got some reliability issues on the driver's side as well as on the technical side. In terms of the driver's side, Lance Stroll, the brand new Formula One driver from Canada, driving for Williams this year, he picked one hell of a year to make his Formula One debut. These cars are generating more downforce than we've seen since about 2004. So these cars, and Nico Rosberg, reigning world champion, he visited testing. He said that the drivers are going to be gladiators this year, and he called the cars monsters. So Lance Stroll, welcome to Formula One. You're now a gladiator, and you have to wrestle a monster. So my hat's off to him. He did a decent job with what he did manage to achieve for Williams. He had a big crash during one day of testing coming out of turn 8 or turn 9, depending on your definition of a turn, and he ripped the corners off the Williams. However, very good effort. I'm sure it's extremely difficult to get yourself acclimated to a Formula One car, particularly one that nobody has ever driven before. Yes, he's had a lot of simulator work, he's driven the car on test days, things like that, but he drove the 2014, 15, and 16 car. Nobody has driven these 2017 cars yet, really, so he has a big challenge, but I'm sure he has plenty of talent, and obviously his career thus far substantiates that claim. So Lance Stroll clearly having some adaptability issues, but I'm sure he will get those sorted by the time we get to Melbourne. In terms of reliability on the technical side, however, and things are about to get a little salty, so I caution you. However, McLaren. We've got to talk about McLaren. The timesheets tell this story. Stoffel Van Dorn, 17th. Fernando Alonso, 18th. Ahead of McLaren are Haas, Toro Rosso, Williams, Renault, Force India, Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. Behind McLaren are Sauber. And that's it. Stoffel van Dorn, his best lap time was a 1:21.348 over 235 laps for 1,093 kilometers. Fernando Alonso in P18, his best time a 1:21.389 over 190 laps for 884 kilometers. Honda lost 4 engines during testing. 4 engines. I don't think anybody else lost 2 engines. I know Ferrari lost 1 in the last couple of days because I think they were just stretching it to the limit to see just when is it gonna break. But Honda lost 4 engines. Now I understand. You came into this engine formula a year late. It was introduced in 2014, you didn't make your debut into 2015, but the reason for that was you wanted 2014 to see the trends and to develop your design so that you could hit the ground running in 2015. Well, the only thing that was running in 2015 was Fernando Alonso's heart rate going higher and higher and higher, complaining about the GP2 engine in the back of the car. Rightly so, I must say. 2016, terrible. And 2017 testing, terrible. You have the entire grid but for Sauber in front of you, and your name is McLaren International. Eric Bouillet, I saw a brief interview with him from Sky Sports asking him about the dynamics with McLaren and Honda, and he's saying that they're happy with the marriage, but there needs to be some work done. Now, of course, that's a very diplomatic answer to give, and I'm sure the board of directors over at McLaren have told him to say something like that. However, Fernando Alonso is not happy with that marriage. He wants a divorce, it must be said. Alonso has done fewer mileage than Van Dorn. His lap time is also slower than Van Dorn. And that mileage deficit, it's about 150 kilometers, so it's pretty substantial. Honda have gone out saying that they are, well, shall we say about 10,000 kilometers short on the mileage that they would have liked to get over the last 3 years. That's terrible. That's absolutely horrible. And to hear that from a company like Honda, who in their road cars are known for their reliability and their robustness and longevity of their cars, that's frightening. That's absolutely frightening. And 4 engines. Did I mention that they lost 4 engines over 2 weeks? That is just astonishing. I think Formula One had better reliability in the 1980s, to be perfectly honest with you, than what Honda are managing now. Not only that, but when the engines are running, they're finding electronics problems. The vibrations generated by the engine are causing the electrical boxes to fail or connections to come loose. And probably most humiliatingly of all, Honda have come out to say that their oil tank was improperly designed. Okay, so you've got this problem. You are a multi-billion-dollar international company known for engineering cars that are very reliable and dependable, and they last a long time, and all of that stuff. You're going to tell me that a company with that sort of history and that sort of infrastructure can't design an oil tank? I don't get it. I truly don't get it. The time has come where we need to stop being sympathetic toward Honda and stop being sympathetic toward McLaren and start getting really angry at them, because McLaren, all of those drivers' championships, all those constructors' championships, they had Prost, they had Senna, they had Hakkinen, they had Hamilton, and now they can't even break into the top 15 in Formula One testing. I can't wait to see how badly they do in Melbourne, simply because at this point it's a laughingstock. It's an absolute laughingstock. And I do not understand how McLaren can even afford to get their cars on track anymore, because I don't know about you, but did you see that McLaren livery? I did. There are virtually no sponsors anywhere on it. It's that papaya orange and black with some white thrown in it. It looks pretty bad, honestly. It does not remind me of the McLaren logo of old, like they were talking about it was designed around. Absolutely not. Just, what are you doing, McLaren? Get your act together and get your asses in gear at this point, because you wanted Ron Dennis gone. Ron Dennis is gone. He is now very happily working for the UK Ministry of Defence. Very good to see Ron Dennis finding a good job very quickly. But Alright, you went through all that nonsense of getting rid of Ron Dennis, who, by the way, was responsible for Prost, Senna, Hakkinen, and Hamilton, who gave you all those world championships, just saying. But you went through all that, you got rid of Ron Dennis, and now you're saying the team is restructured and ready to compete. Well, 17th and 18th is not competing. Whatever. Tirade completed. Moving toward the brighter side of life now, I'm very happy to see the form that Ferrari have got, and really the form that Mercedes have got as well. We mentioned the intrigue at the front of the grid before, and I've got to say that that is something that excites me big time for this season. Like I said, we haven't had a championship fight between two teams for a long time because, well, we had Brawn in 09, Red Bull ran away with it from 2010 to 2013, and Mercedes ran away with it from 2014 to 2016. So to see the prospect of a real fight at the sharp end of the grid is unbelievably exciting. We need to blow some life into this sport again. The new aero regulations have gone a long way already into doing that. The cars are already faster than they were in 2007, so that's very good to see. But we need a championship fight in Formula One, and it's not enough just to have it between two drivers on the same team like we've had between Rosberg and Hamilton. We need to have two teams going at it for the title, because that is what draws ratings, that is what engages fans, and that really is what writes history books too. We talk about Niki Lauda and James Hunt for a reason, McLaren and Ferrari. Two different drivers, two different teams going at it. It goes down to the final round and there's a half a point between them. That is the sort of dynamic that we need in Formula One, but it needs to happen organically. I would not like to see the sport get closer artificially. I want to see that organic team-to-team, straight-on, head-to-head fight, just trying to outdrive each other and try to out-engineer each other. And that is what Ferrari and Mercedes look to be doing once again, and that's very, very cool. I almost said Ferrari and McLaren there, but we know how McLaren are doing, obviously. Mercedes now definitely the ones to beat, and it looks that Ferrari are finally ready to take the fight to them. We were thinking that maybe Red Bull could be that team to spoil the Mercedes party, and they still might be. However, they are not quite at the sharp end yet as far as testing goes. There's some speculation out, however, that Red Bull could bring a significantly different car to Melbourne. And I don't know who initially made that claim or how they're substantiating it, but I did see some interesting pictures from the pit lane at Catalunya that featured a Red Bull mock-up, they were calling it. Adrian Newey called it a dummy car, which had some very interesting details on it, particularly on the front wing. The front wings this year, they all have that Delta profile, but the wing that Red Bull were running was basically a straight wing, and only the flap elements on the outboard sides were angled back, technically to form that Delta shape if you draw a line from the end plate to the center of the wing structure. But interesting idea on that so-called dummy car. I don't know whether or not that thing has any relation to what Red Bull are going to be racing, but something tells me that you don't invest the time, money, and resources to develop dummy parts, particularly in a high-dollar environment like Formula One, because you just don't do that. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money. Red Bull are up to something here, so we need to watch them, and as soon as that car breaks cover for FP1 in Melbourne, I'm going to be all over that thing with my face pressed up against the television trying to find any new details on that Red Bull, because Adrian Newey is a genius, and we do know that Red Bull have a history of taking some very radical interpretations of the regulations, so definitely watch for that story as well. In terms of the straight-up battle between Ferrari and Mercedes, well, we'll see, to be perfectly honest. It's not quite known whether or not Mercedes are sandbagging, and it's not quite known whether or not Ferrari are sandbagging, because everybody does to testing in some extent, because you don't want to show your hand quite that soon, but that Ferrari pace seemed pretty genuine, and if they are sandbagging, that means, well, they could go even quicker, and they're already at the front. So we'll see. Mercedes, if they're sandbagging, we have to assume it's by an awful lot, because if you're not even topping the timesheets, you've either got something very, very big that you still want to hide, or you've got something very, very big that's out in the open that you're on the back foot. So we're going to have to watch those timesheets from free practice and obviously qualifying in Melbourne. That first qualifying session really is the first time that we will get a true sense of just what that pecking order really is, because the nature of this sport, it's so fiercely competitive in every avenue, and they don't show their hand until it absolutely matters, and they put it all out on the line. So that really, to me, is when the season starts, qualifying in Melbourne, which we will see on the 25th of March. In terms of what to expect from me over the course of the season, I am floating several ideas. I'm thinking about how best to present them, but I would like to do podcasts after every Grand Prix, and I have some restrictions, both logistically for myself, but also due to copyright regulations. I'm not allowed to show any actual Formula One content, and in terms of getting around that with fair use and things like that, I don't want to find out the hard way that I was wrong. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to present these to you, but I do want to do podcasts after each Grand Prix, and also, possibly, you guys could let me know what you think of this idea. I would like to do some live stream commentary of maybe some practice sessions just to get a feel for it, and then some qualifying and race sessions. We'll see how that goes. I'm not quite sure how I would have to format that, because again, I can't show any actual Formula One content. But let me know what your level of interest for content like that is, and I will see what I can do about it, because I think it would be a lot of fun for me, and I also think it would be a lot of fun for you guys, because I would like to have some live interaction with you, and I'd be very interested to see how that dynamic develops. But that's my thoughts on 2017 winter testing, that annual ritual that all of us Formula One fans go through just to see what everybody has done and who's got it right, who's got it wrong. I absolutely love every aspect of this sport, even the more mundane aspects like testing. But absolutely great. That's what I think. I want to know what you think. Please do let me know in the comments below. For now, that is all I have got for you today. FerrariMan601 saying thank you very, very much for watching, and thank you for your continued support and engagement. We will see you soon.